Woo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. So much to get to today. We are going to be talking about Illinois and the vote by mail ballots. Yes, they have to be counted by today, 2 weeks after the election officially. Today, November 19th. Election integrity groups, they're predicting now that there is going to be a quick end to the vote by mail process. Now that we have a Republican controlled Congress, they're going to address some of these election laws like no voter ID and counting vote by mail ballots postmarked, by election day and counting them up to 2 weeks after the election. I think it's so funny. Oh, vote by mail process. It's so secure, but we are going to count the vote by mails 2 weeks after the election because, the post office, it can kind of be tricky sometimes and it might take 2 weeks to get through the mail. But it's such a secure process. It's amazing. If it was so great, why would you need 2 whole weeks to get the votes in to be counted? That just goes to show you. And I say this all of the time. You would never mail yourself, you get a paycheck. Maybe you get paid on Friday, you get a paycheck. Would you mail that paycheck back to yourself? Would you put it in the mail and mail it back to yourself? Would you take $1,000, put it in an envelope, and mail it to yourself? No, you wouldn't do that because you don't trust the United States Postal Service. You just don't. And, obviously our election officials don't trust it either. And because our election law wouldn't reflect that distrust in that process or in that service. They give the U.S. Postal Service 2 weeks to get the ballots to them to be counted. So we're going to be chatting a little bit about that, but I also want to talk about the Illinois Democrats. They've been meeting and strategizing ways to block incoming Trump policies. The state representative said, hey, that's not going to work. It's just not going to work. So we're going to be discussing all of that. Plus, there's a teacher who is crying during this interview. I think it's pretty hilarious. She had to resign because she made some, violent threats, I guess is the best way to describe this. She called for quite literally the death of Trump voters and said that she'd put Trump voters on a stretcher. So this teacher's crying in this interview because she had to resign. Yeah, naturally. You're supposed, yeah, I would imagine you'd have to resign. You should not be teaching the next generation. If you're saying like that, things like that publicly. I will be getting to that story here as well this hour. Be sure to find me on YouTube. You can subscribe to the channel today. It's just real easy. Type it in your search bar, The Conservative Cat Show. Subscribe and share this video out with your friends. Like our social media. We're on Facebook, Cities 92.9. You can go check it out. You can check it out on YouTube. You can check it out on Rumble. We're everywhere. We work hard so that way we can provide you daily news Monday through Friday. Not a whole lot of shows do this where we get out there and we provide you daily content live from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. And we all work really hard to do it. So be sure to subscribe and visit our advertisers. If you're interested in advertising on the radio, you can text me 309-451-9299. That's 309-451-9299. If you have a business, we can take your business to the next level. So the November 5th general election was 2 weeks ago, but Illinois continues to count vote by mail ballots. Today's the last day. Election integrity groups, they're saying that this practice could be reined in, and it could actually go as far as being eliminated, actually, this vote by mail process that we have here in Illinois. So Carol Davis, the chairman of the Illinois Conservative Union, said a recent federal court ruling will likely result in states, including Illinois, by the way, not counting mail-in ballots that are cast and postmarked by Election Day. So this is a really interesting federal appeals court ruling. This was, ballots that arrive 5 days after the election, but are postmarked for by Election Day. Okay, they've got the Election Day date on there. And if they arrive 5 days later, and this was a case in Mississippi, and in conjunction with Judicial Watch, the Republican National Committee had a lawsuit and they won in this Mississippi federal appeals court. And, they said, hey, you can't do that because constitutionally, there's a clause in there that says, hey, we're going to have 1 day, election day. So this is what Carol Davis said. She said, this will end up with the United States Supreme Court, this federal case in Mississippi, will end up with the United States Supreme Court, and it will probably happen before the midterms, that case. So it's going to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. So we'll probably see 1 day election before the midterm election in 2026. So that's very exciting. If this case goes all the way to the Supreme Court, conservative majority on the Supreme Court, we could see a 1 day election day before 2026, which is so crucial. If we're ever going to have free and fair elections, we can't have 2 weeks for people to count ballots. You can't. There's this, not even if there isn't blatant fraud going on like it was in Pennsylvania, where they just came out and said with their mouths, we're going to get to this, that they were going to count these undated ballots that arrived, a couple of weeks after the election, or a few days after the election happened. They were just undated ballots, and these commissioners, Bucks County election commissioners, they said, yeah, we're just going to count these undated ballots. They didn't come in with a date on them, but we're going to count them anyway. Despite the Pennsylvania Supreme Court saying we can't count them, we're going to count them anyway. We're going to illegally count them. Okay, so it's so crucial that we get our elections in order prior to 2026. So Carol Davis, with the Illinois Conservative Union, an election integrity group, right? So they said, although the states have the right to set the time, place, and manner of election, the elections clause of the Constitution designates one day for election day. Okay, so there's a clause in the Constitution that was interpreted, of course, by this appeals court, as well as, hey, election day is supposed to be 1 day. So in late October, like I said, the RNC, the Judicial Watch, they partnered up and they won this lawsuit, reversing a lower court ruling allowing vote-by-mail ballots to be counted 5 days after the election day, as long as it was postmarked by election day. Now, here in Illinois, we don't do the whole 5-day thing. We do 14 days. We do 14 days after the election, as long as that ballot is postmarked by election day. Carol Davis said the Republican majority Congress will probably and likely take a carrot stick approach with these states that have these laws. With Illinois, if they vote, or if they allow vote by mail ballots and a vote by mail counting after election day, most likely the Republican controlled now Congress is going to take a carrot stick approach. Hey, we want your state to have voter ID. We don't want you to count ballots 2 weeks after the election. And if you don't like it, then we're not going to provide you with road funds. Yes. So, President Reagan did this, and he did it successfully. So, Carol Davis, she says, if we want states to do certain things as it pertains to election law, we'll just take away funding, federal funding. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, federal funding for elections. We'll just take federal funding from the road fund or the transportation fund, and we'll take that away from you until you get your elections in order. So that's probably, if this, Supreme Court case, like I said, in Mississippi, it's going to go all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, probably before the 2026 midterm. If that doesn't change this whole vote by mail 2 weeks after the election thing, this will. The Republican-controlled majority Congress is probably going to say no more funds for you if you can't get your elections in order. At least I hope they do that. So the Illinois law gives election officials, like I said, in Illinois, 2 weeks to count the vote-by-mail ballots with an election day on the postmark. Now, in Pennsylvania, like I said, this is really interesting, blatantly just trying to steal the election. They admitted with their mouths that they were going to illegally count ballots that shocker, are in favor of the opponent of Dave McCormick, Bob Casey. Bob Casey, you've heard him before. I talked about him. He was the Democrat Senate candidate who did not want to be seen with Kamala Harris at her rally. So this is really interesting. You've got Dave McCormick. He filed lawsuits against the election officials who have now openly defied a Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruling that said that you cannot count misdated or undated ballots. You can't do it. But they're doing it anyway. So unlike Pennsylvania, Davis said here in Illinois, if something like that happened and if the ballots are undated or misdated, that's actually not illegal here, which I found really interesting. In the statute, of course, it says that the officials are supposed to go by the postmark. If it's postmarked by election day, then you got to count it. But say that there is no date on it. Say they didn't postmark the ballot for some odd reason. Then they go by the date of which the voter attests that they mailed it. Okay, so if there is no postmark, you just go by what the voter said, in the internal envelope that you mail your mail by or vote by mail ballot in. So Davis said, hypothetically, say an Illinois voter fills out a vote by mail ballot on November 6th. Right? You get your vote by mail, you request a vote by mail ballot, you fill it out on November 6th, and then you illegally attest, which you could do, and nobody's going to stop you. You illegally attest that, I filled this out before election day, or I filled this out on November 5th, and then you sign and date it, and you post date it, and you illegally attest that you signed it at that time. And there's nobody stopping you because it's all done. It's a secret ballot. It's all done in your home, in the confinement of your home, and nobody's checking to see if you actually filled it out prior to the election day. Okay, and then the ballot could be counted as long as it gets to an election authority within a 14-day window. Okay, so November 6th, I get my ballot and I illegally attest that I filled that ballot out on November 1st, right? Prior to the election, and I filled that out on November 1st. And then that ballot will get counted. So you see where we run into a lot of problems here because, you see Donald Trump's winning, the day after the election, and you're like, I didn't get a chance to vote. I can still change it. I can still change the results. Okay, and I'm going to fill out my vote by mail ballot now and send it in, and likely it will get to your election authority within that 14-day window, because 14 days is quite a bit of time for that vote by mail ballot to get to your election authority. So the voters, they have to sign the inside envelope, of course, attesting that this is my ballot, this is my signature, and here's the date I voted. And of course, you're going to have nefarious actors, because we live in reality, and they're going to date it before the election day. Or you might just have somebody who's naive and ignorant of the law, and then they postmark it or date it for the election day. They might be filling out their vote by mail ballot. They might think, I'm going to date this for election day. And they're filling it out on November 6th or the day after the election. So on November 16th, this past weekend, there were newly counted ballots in Chicago that chipped away at Trump's vote totals in Illinois. And then you've got Kamala Harris, just this weekend. Okay. And this is some numbers out of Chicago for you, just to give you an idea of how major it is that we count these ballots after the election, and it can really swing an election. So Kamala Harris, over this past weekend, she received 21,000 votes, more votes just this past weekend in Illinois, in Chicago, and Trump received 2,500 votes in Chicago and Illinois. So it matters. It matters. And, I'm not saying all those 21,000 votes that Kamala Harris received after the election, this past weekend. I'm not saying all of those 21,000 people voted on November 6th and then backdated it to, the election day, or illegally attested that they signed it, prior to election day, their ballot. But of those 21,000, I'm willing to bet some most likely are illegally attested ballots, or maybe had no postmark on them. It's not far-fetched to say that. Okay. Statistically speaking, it's probably likely that some of those ballots had no postmark, and then there were people who illegally attested that they signed that ballot prior to election, or illegally, attested that they signed that ballot prior to election day. All right. So, like I said, today, last day to count them. I will be right back. I've got to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Good morning. Hey, it's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single day. Now, I do want to get to this. A group of, I don't know, about a dozen Chicago area elected officials, including state representatives, and a couple dozen organizations, non-government organization, NGOs, nonprofits, they hosted this like community meeting, and they were like strategizing on how to protect policies that are currently in place at the local and state level. So really, how do we remain a sanctuary city? How do we remain a sanctuary state in Illinois? In Chicago, that's what this meeting was all about. How do we keep certain policies in place amidst a Trump win, amidst a Republican-controlled Congress? How do we do this? So we're going to play this clip here. This is the local news. I think it's ABC. They covered this in Chicago. Some of the things these state representatives say, just I can't wrap my mind around it. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
Worry is real.
The next 4 years is my main concern.
And the concern palpable as hundreds of Chicagoans came together to talk about how they say a second Trump presidency may impact them and their communities.
I want to hear what the plans are, how we can work together so we can protect each other, because we need to be there for each other right now and throughout whatever's going to come.
Today, a coalition of over a dozen Chicago area elected officials and nearly 24 neighborhood organizations hosted the community meeting to share strategies for protecting policies already in place at the local and state levels.
What are some gaps? What are some of the things we should be working on the legislative side, but also on the community organizing side? What are people going to do to protect their neighbors?
Now, that is a state representative you're hearing. Her name is Lillian Jimenez. She's a state representative based in the Chicago. Well, her district is in Chicago. So here we go.
The gathering was held in the auditorium of Roosevelt High School on the city's far northwest side. It began with a rally.
Brothers and sisters, when I say people, you say power, people.
Before heading into breakout sessions led by community leaders, where neighborhood residents asked questions and came up with their own list of concerns about everything from reproductive rights and gender justice to immigration.
What did the Trump administration try to do specifically in Chicago and Illinois?
Dwayne Borders isn't optimistic about the new administration's social policies and says minority, immigrant, and marginalized groups should be ready for anything.
We know that they have at least 4 years in the White House to make anything happen.
And while some would argue the policies of the next administration will affect everyone, Shannon Bunting says it's important that people like herself become actively involved.
I think white people in particular, but certainly women, need to stand up and support our brothers and sisters.
More community engagement is planned. So what is next? Well, both organizers and people in the community say they will continue to protect themselves and each other as they all brace for what they anticipate will be a difficult 4 years.
Oh boy. All right. So lots to unpack there. I love this white woman. Like, tell me you have white guilt without telling me you have white guilt, Shannon Bunting. So she's, at this community meeting, she's an attendee, and she goes, we have to help our brothers and sisters, specifically white women. It's these wine moms who go out and, they've got all this white guilt and they feel like they've got to do something. And what they're doing is actually hurting and harming the Black community by allowing illegal immigrants to suckle at the taxpayer's deed. Really, that's what this is all about, is the illegal immigration and, reproductive rights, abortion, which I've already gone through several times on this program. Donald Trump is not going after your abortions, okay? It's up to the states, as the Supreme Court ruled. He's not going to sign a national abortion ban, nothing like that, okay? So these people are all in a tizzy for no reason. One, two, trying to keep policies in place that keep Chicago a sanctuary city or keep Illinois a sanctuary state. That's dangerous to the Black community and dangerous for everybody. State Representative Adam Niemerg said Democrats, whatever they come up with here at these meetings and strategy meetings that they hold, this was, I think, at like some high school somewhere, which I don't even, to even begin to unpack this. You're not even really supposed to hold like political rallies at high schools like that. I'm pretty sure. And I mean, you're using the high school as like a Democrat strategy planning session for a Democrat strategy, a political strategy planning session. So I don't even know how that's because I think it's a public school and you're using taxpayer dollars to do political strategies, which is just another layer to this cake. But State Representative Adam Niemerg said, whatever they come up with here is not going to work. The governor has said that law enforcement will not cooperate with the federal law enforcement with deportations. And he said, well, the law enforcement in Illinois, they don't really like Governor J.B. Pritzker right now because of this things like the Safety Act. And he said, federal funding is tied to all of this. So much like the election law, if Illinois won't get in line, if that state won't get in line with election laws that are consistent with the Constitution, as I said, there was a clause in the Constitution that talks about one-day election day. If they don't get in line, then we're going to cut your funding at a federal level. So there's federal funding tied to all of this. Trump has, all he has to do is cut federal funding. And I don't want to see that happen. We're already screwed here in the state of Illinois. We're looking at over a $3 billion deficit going into the next fiscal year. So that's mainly because bad policies, of course, coupled with the open borders. And you've got $3 billion that we've probably spent on illegals so far here in the state of Illinois. And the Democrats don't know what they're going to do right now. That's why they're freaking out. That's why they're holding meetings like this, because the Trump policies will be enforced one way or another. And if that means Trump is going to cut federal funding, that means he's going to cut federal funding. So like I said, State Representative Lillian Jimenez, she was at the Roosevelt High School in Chicago. During an interview, she said that we have to talk about the legislative gaps. In Illinois, there are no legislative gaps. They dream about ways to screw you over in this state. These legislators do. So there are no legislative gaps. I mean, we're giving illegals hotel rooms and credit cards. I don't know what else you could do for the illegal immigrant community. Then she says this is beautiful. This is amazing. She goes, but then there's gaps also in the community organizing side. So that community organizing, that's code for non-government organizations, this other arm of the government, which are these non-government organizations who have a whole lot of power and a whole lot of tax dollars. What are they going to do to protect their neighbors? So by neighbors, she means illegal immigrants as well. Okay, what are we going to do to protect the illegal immigrants in our communities? And what are the NGOs going to do? Because, it's going to be harder to go after the NGOs for harboring illegal immigrants, I think, than, the state government, because it's going to be harder to touch citizens under the guise of this non-government organization. And they know this. The state representatives know this. This means that they're going to get even more emboldened, these non-government organizations, and they're going to be at the helm of harboring these illegal immigrants. And, I'm sure, I mean, Tom Homan, who, the border czar that Donald Trump picked, he said, look, it's illegal to harbor illegal immigrants, period. And if you are harboring illegal immigrants, then you will face some jail time. Okay. So I'd imagine that applies to the NGOs as well. But it's going to be harder to go after just average Joe citizens. The state of Illinois faces a projected budget deficit of about $3 billion for the coming fiscal year, which is wild. This is according to a new report, not from me, but from the governor's Office of Management and Budget. They know that they are in a pickle, so they can't afford cutting federal funding just being cut right now because they're looking at a budget deficit. The only reason why this fiscal year, 2025, not the next fiscal year that we have, the only reason why this fiscal year was kind of afloat was because we had those federal COVID dollars. But the problem with that is we got those federal COVID dollars, opened up all of these reoccurring programs or reoccurring expenditures. And this was a one-time allotment. This was a one-time spending allotment, these COVID dollars. Now we don't have the money to continue these appropriations. Democrats in Illinois continued these appropriations. So we have to find the money to fund all of these pet projects we created with the COVID money, and the money isn't there. And the money isn't going to be there at all if Donald Trump comes in and cuts the federal funding. So I do have to take a quick break, but we're going to be right back. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Before we took the break, I was telling you about Illinois facing a budget deficit of about $3 billion with a B dollars for this coming fiscal year. Now, it's important to note that this last fiscal year didn't look so great either. The only reason why it was somewhat afloat was because of those federal COVID dollars, the ARPA funds, right? And the problem there is that we created all of these programs, these pet projects, and by we, I mean the government, the state, your state representatives. They had all of these little fun little pet projects and appropriations, and really those COVID dollars were meant for one-time spending. But they created programs with those dollars, and those are reoccurring, like appropriations, reoccurring costs, and we don't have money. And it doesn't look good that we are out there. Governor J.B. Pritzker is out there saying things like, "Oh, we're gonna, not comply with the deportations. Law enforcement will not work with the ICE." He's out there saying, you got to go through me to get to the illegal immigrants, right, or our neighbors. But what's not good is Donald Trump will just withhold funding, federal funds, and it could get very rough for Illinoisans. Because of that, we're already facing a budget deficit. So if they don't bend on this illegal immigration thing, they could withhold federal funds that we desperately can't just gamble with at this time. Okay, because we're not looking good. We're facing a $3 million budget deficit for the next fiscal year. Let's take a listen to this. This is Trump's pick. His border czar, Tom Homan, was on with Charlie Kirk from Illinois, by the way. He's responding to Governor J.B. Pritzker's recent pledge to keep Illinois a sanctuary state for illegal immigrants. So let's take a listen.
Please. One who intends to come take away the freedom and opportunity and dignity of Illinoisans, I would remind you that a happy warrior is still a warrior. You come for my people, you come through me.
Game
1
on.
minute, your reaction, Tom.
Game on. We got no problem going through him. I got 20,000 men and women in ICE are going to do their job with no apology. Congress has enacted a law that protects this country. People need to understand, but what if they're not criminal aliens? Look, entering this country illegally is a crime. Every illegal alien in this country committed a crime to get here. So they're all criminals. And look, there's some worse than others. I get that. And even if they're not a criminal alien, when you cross that border and you overwhelm the Border Patrol, just because you're simply illegal alien, not a criminal, when you overrun the Border Patrol, that's when they get busy changing diapers, making baby formula, making hospital runs, making transportation runs. That's when the fentanyl comes across to kill 250,000 people. That's when you got 600% increase in sex trafficking. That's when you have a record number of terrorists crossing the border and people on the terrorist watch list. Illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. We're going to enforce the law without apologies. And the day Donald Trump takes that oath, we're in a go mode. And if any government wants to stand in the way, go ahead and do it. We'll see what happens. I'm not going to be intimidated. The men and women of ICE ain't going to be intimidated. We're going to do our job the way President Trump has committed to the American people. We have a mandate, and we're going to do it.
Wow.
I mean, that's why I worked as hard as I did on the election, everybody.
All right. So that was Trump's border pick, right? Border czar. Chicagoans, Illinois elected officials, they all met this last weekend to strategize about how they're going to block incoming Trump policies and how they're going to block mass deportations. Of course, and the attendees shared their concerns with about everything, including access to abortion, justice, gender justice, illegal immigration, all of that. But bottom line, they're just going to cut your funding. And we are really, really not in a position to do all of that, to block Trump's policies and to really peeve him off because we are broke. I just shared with you, that's not me saying it, that's the governor's office of management and budget. They're projecting a budget deficit of $3 billion for the coming fiscal year. So we're not in a position to be making demands. All right. I do want to talk a little bit about this emotionally weak woman, this teacher. Okay, so she probably should have refrained from posting violent threats, saying that she was going to put Trump supporters on stretchers. I don't know if you're that emotionally weak and you can't refrain from posting these threats, then maybe you shouldn't be, I don't know, teaching the next generation. Okay, so she has resigned now. Her name is Annie Dunleavy. I don't really know. I don't really care. I can't believe that this woman was teaching our children. But she can't refrain from posting violent threats towards people who she politically disagrees with. And she's so emotionally weak, she can't refrain from it. And then she cries when she's confronted about her actions. She shouldn't have been teaching this generation, our next generation. She shouldn't be around children if she's this emotionally unstable. And good, she resigned. I'll be right back with that story here next. You're going to like the clip I pulled for you. I'll be right back with more Conservative Cat. Woo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Look, she's emotionally weak, folks, and I don't understand how somebody can't refrain from posting violent threats towards people that you politically disagree with. You are clearly emotionally unstable. You shouldn't have been around children to begin with. I don't know how she managed to land this teaching job, but her name is Annie Dunleavy, and she was forced to resign after posting a video where she threatened to kill Trump supporters. And of course, these people are consumed by their victim mentality. They want to be a victim. So she started crying during this interview. I'm going to play this here. Here we go.
If you voted for Trump, literally, please delete me, block me, get rid of everything of me, or step to me so that I know what's up and then I can handle you how I see fit. Just because you won doesn't mean we don't remember who the blank you voted for. You're not in the clear. Please don't test your gangster on me because you will end on a stretcher, gone forever. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so
it sounds like a threat.
It sounds very extreme. And again, I was in a moment of high emotions and I shouldn't have ever posted the video. But the message I was trying to get across, and it came off very wrong, was, if this is going to give people the almost permission in their minds to enact violence against women or anybody, I wanted to basically just say, I'm not going to go down without a fight. I mean, it's my life's dream to be a teacher. I consider those kids my kids because I don't have any of my own. And they fill that for me. And it's so fulfilling. It's so rewarding. And I know that what people see right now, I don't look like that person, but I truly would do anything to help any child and any family in need.
Okay, so now this is the original video that Annie posted here. Here we go.
Because you won doesn't mean we don't remember who the you voted for. You're not in the clear. And just please don't test your gangster on me because you will end on a stretcher.
Wow. Okay, so you will end on a stretcher. So she sits there and she says, oh, I accidentally. Ah, yes, the whole accidental you'll end on a stretcher and be gone forever statement. Yeah, that easily gets confused with I'm not going down without a fight. That's what she tried to say. She meant to say I'm not going down without a fight, but you didn't say that. You see, you said you'll end up on a stretcher and you'll be gone forever. I don't know how you mix those up. Those two statements, I guess, get mixed up all the time. I'll be right back. It's Conservative Cat Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Find me on YouTube. It's the Conservative Cat Show on Cities 92.9. All right, so there we go. Look at it. She goes, it's my life's dream to be a teacher. I don't have any children of my own, so I consider those children my children. That is a very emotionally screwed up sentiment. If you have a teacher out there saying that she believes that or she feels like her children are your children or your children are her children and she got into teaching because she doesn't have any children of her own, that is a big red flag, and she should not have landed this teaching position. She says that she doesn't have any children of her own. Yeah, probably. Now I don't know what this woman's dating life is like or what her romantic relationships look like. But I'll tell you right now, no man is going to go around that emotional wreck. Okay, women are emotional creatures, yes, but this woman is unstable. Clearly, she said something very, very violent. She could not refrain from saying it and videotaping herself saying it. So nobody's going to go around her. No wonder she doesn't have children. Parenting, and when you decide to have a child with somebody else, parenting is not for the emotionally weak. So typically, somebody you choose to parent with, you have to choose somebody who's not incapable of parenting. Okay, what would happen to children? I mean, I would not trust this woman with a child. I would not. What would happen if this child said something that she didn't like or that she disagreed with? Would she put them in a stretcher? Boom, gone forever. Okay, so this was a teacher. I mean, your school is littered with these types. So you have to be vigilant. You have to be on guard and understand that the vetting process for some of these people is probably not airtight. She somehow managed to become a teacher, and this woman is clearly emotionally unstable, damaged, and she thinks, or the reason why, I mean, it's my life's dreams to be a teacher. I want to be a teacher because these are my kids. I don't have any of my own. That is not something you want to hear from a teacher. That oh, your children are my children. I can't have any of my own children. So I'm replacing that void in my life with your children. You do not want that as a parent. So, oh boy, she called for violence. We're going to get to that here maybe on the other side. I just can't believe that she actually did this. Like the fact that she was the only one, or, she was the only one who called for violence towards half of the country and then claimed that we were the ones calling for violence against women is just so deranged. It's so pathetic. It's such a lie. There is nobody on the right calling for violence against women. I don't know if she's talking about the abortion thing. That's not violence. It's just states coming up with their own laws because the Supreme Court told them they could do that. But she's the only one out there calling for violence. I mean, really, like violence like that, I haven't seen really any other leftist call for something quite like that. So she's the only one out there calling for violence against half of the country. This is half of the country we're talking about, and she has some nerve to claim that we're the violent ones and that we've called for violence against women. Don't know about that. Especially because nearly half of the Trump voters are women. Okay, 45% of women in this country voted for Donald Trump. It wasn't like, Kamala took the woman vote. I mean, it was pretty close. So, question, would she also consider those kids her kids if their parents voted the way she despises? Okay, so say these kids, came to school one day sporting some Trump socks or Trump shirt or wearing a MAGA hat, right? Would she consider those kids her kids? If those kids held political beliefs or the political beliefs of their parents, which is very common, okay, would she consider those kids her kids? And, would she beat them, or put them on a stretcher? Gone, boom, gone forever. Like I said, however, I really doubt she wanted any violence or really, really was serious about her calls for violence toward her students' parents. I mean, this is some of her students, obviously their parents voted for Donald Trump. At least some of her students' parents voted for Donald Trump. I mean, he won in kind of a landslide, right? Because that's basically what she said. She goes, Trump supporters, they need to be out on a stretcher. Some of those students' parents are probably Trump supporters. I don't think that she really meant that, but she's so emotionally weak that she just says things. And I don't think that this interview really did her a whole lot of favors. It made her look much worse. Okay. So we're going to get to more of that, but also Whoopi Goldberg. She was caught lying about a bakery denying her order due to her politics. Now, that actually happened to me. I'm not kidding you. I'm not trying to up my victim complex here. I didn't even realize what was going on until I left the shop. It was a coffee shop. I had ordered a coffee, and I had my Donald Trump hat on. It was like a stocking cap. It was the winter, and I had it on, and people were like kind of looking at me funny. It was a liberal coffee shop. They're all liberal. Liberals, they know how to make coffee, okay? And I love when liberals make my coffee. So not Starbucks, actually. It was a coffee shop in town. I walk in, and they refused service. I was so confused. I was like, do I have broccoli? Did I offend this woman? Do I know this woman? But they would not let me pay for my coffee. I waited probably about 20-30 minutes for my coffee. And eventually I was just like, hey, what's going on? I ordered this like 30 minutes ago. Nobody else is here. And they said, yeah, we can't provide you your coffee. And I said, what? And they said, yeah, your card wasn't charged. We can't give you your coffee. And they denied me service, quite literally. So that actually happened to me, and it actually happens to conservatives. You just don't hear conservatives, complaining about it. I just kind of, was like, okay. Then I got into the car and I saw the Trump hat in my rearview mirror, and I was like, oh, maybe that's what it was. I'm sure that's what it was. But we're gonna get to that. Woo! Red Kingdom. Good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Before we took the break, I was telling you a little bit about a teacher. She, said that she wants to put all kinds of Trump supporters on a stretcher. Boom, gone forever. She said this in a video. Okay. And, she, goes, oh, I accidentally said that. What I meant to say was I'm not going down without a fight, right? Because those two statements get mixed up all the time. Yes, the whole, oh, I said it by accident thing. See, and that's what I'm saying is this woman has no accountability. She's an emotional wreck. Don't know how she was able to land a job as a teacher, but you have to be vigilant, okay, with your teachers. Because you could have some like this lady. So she called for violence towards half of the country. She's one of the only ones, by the way. I wouldn't even say that a majority of liberals are calling for violence. I would say she's pretty close to the only one. There's only a handful of people who are going out there and calling for violence towards half of the country right now. And she says that, Trump supporters are, calling for violence against women. I don't know if she's like referring to the abortion thing. It's not calling for violence against women. Even if you're pro-life and you'd like to see a national abortion ban signed, that's not calling for violence against women. But that's not where we're at. There's no national abortion ban. There won't be one. The states will make their own laws, as the Supreme Court has said you can do. States will make their own laws as it pertains to abortion. So half of the voters, Trump voters, are women, by the way. And pretty much almost all of the women voted for Donald Trump. Close to it. Kamala Harris did take that officially, the women vote, but it was very close. It wasn't like 60-40. It was like 51-49. I mean, it was very, very close. Now I'm just throwing out numbers, but it was close. He almost had the woman vote totally. So my question here for this lady would be, okay, so say a kid walks in and has a Trump shirt on, or say that kid's parents voted for Donald Trump, would you still consider those kids your kids? She said the whole reason why she went into teaching, and you have a lot of individuals who get into teaching for this reason, and this should be red flag number one. If I was doing interviews at Unit 5 or District 87, I'd say, why do you want to get into teaching? And if their response is, I don't have children of my own, and I want to be around children or other people's children because I don't have kids of my own, that's emotionally unstable. That's not a good reason to get into teaching, and you shouldn't be getting the job. Okay, so she says, those kids are my kids. Big red flag. But I doubt she would consider those kids her kids if they voted or if the parents voted a certain way that she despises, right? So she made it clear that she thinks very little of people who disagree with her politically. So much she went as far as to say, "Gone forever on a stretcher." She has no business anywhere near children, the next generation, especially not teaching them or lecturing them. Okay, so she basically said that because obviously some of her students' parents voted for Donald Trump. There's no way statistically that they didn't. So she's basically saying she wants to put some of her students' parents on a stretcher. So I don't think this interview did her a whole lot of it didn't do her a whole lot of favors. It made it worse because now there's a face to this story, and it's going to make it so much harder for her to get hired. I would imagine as a teacher. Hopefully, nobody hires this woman. But now all she had to do was shut up. That's all she had to do. She just had to keep her mouth shut, but she's so emotionally weak that she just could not help herself. And, the whole, violence towards women, Trump supporters are violent towards women. Why? Because they voted for Donald Trump. I just don't get that. It's a lie. And it cancels out any kind of sympathy I could have mustered up for this woman. She does not deserve any sympathy. This is clearly, she's upping this victim complex by crying in this interview. Wanted to share that with you. I thought that was really bizarro, where you've got this teacher saying she wants Trump supporters on a stretcher. All right, I do want to get to Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi Goldberg. Oh, Whoopi. She's lying about this bakery denying her order due to her politics. Now, this actually happened to me. I won't say the coffee shop on air, but it's a liberal coffee shop in town. And they actually denied me service. I asked for a coffee. I swiped my card and everything. They didn't charge me. So I guess that they canceled my order. I went back and found out that they, had canceled my order. And there was no charges on my card, but I paid for a coffee and it was 20-30 minutes went by and I was so confused. And I was like, what's taking so long? I'm the only person here. And then they were like, yeah, we can't get that for you. And I was like, oh, are you guys out of it? And they were like, no, we just can't serve you. I was like, well, why? And then they wouldn't respond. And I was just like, okay. And I was thinking that maybe I knew the girl. But I realized when I got into the car that I had my Donald Trump stocking cap on and it says Trump on it. But it was the winter time and it was just the first hat that I grabbed, and I grabbed the Donald Trump hat, and that happened. And it happens to conservatives. Actually, I was reading right before I got on here about Geneva. There's this Geneva mayor, and she actually went out of her way. She trolled Public Square, which if you guys don't know what Public Square is where you can list your business as a conservative Christian business or American freedom-loving business, right? And it's an attempt at really the dual economy, right? Where you've got more people participating in that space where, hey, I love America. And, it's a lot of small business owners who get on there and list their business as a way of advertising. Hey, I'm a freedom loving business. Don't give your money to woke corporations. Right. And this all started after Target kind of did the tuck swimsuits, and they're like, where do I go to, buy my items? Where do I go to buy goods and services? And I don't want to give my money to people with views that aren't like mine and like-minded. And this is a space where business owners list their businesses, and it's a signal of, hey, I'm a like-minded individual. You can spend money with me and know that your dollars are not going towards things like tuck swimsuits. Tuck swimsuits, I'm not even going to get into explaining that. Look it up. Target tuck swimsuits, they were selling them. And Public Square kind of emerged after the whole Bud Light thing too, with Dylan Mulvaney and him, as a transgender promoting Bud Light. So the Geneva mayor created a list. It was pretty much like a hit list of businesses for the Democrat Party to kind of go after. So she's kind of facing a lot of things as far there was a meeting, there was public comment in Geneva, Illinois. This mayor, she created a hit list essentially of businesses that are right leaning or business owners that are right leaning, which I was just like, wow, that's shocking. So it was basically, and that actually happened here locally. A lot of people were like, oh, they called all of our advertisers and they said, don't advertise with the the local Democrat Party here back when we did Stop the Steal, the January 6th bus strip. And they called all the advertisers and they tried to get us, tried to get all of our advertisers off the air. Didn't work. So, and it never does. It never does. But yeah, this actually happens to conservatives. The whole like, oh, I'm going to put you on a list. We're going to boycott you. We're going to deny you service if you're a conservative or if you're a Republican. This happens all of the time to conservatives, actually. I just provided you several examples. Whoopi Goldberg is saying that this bakery denied her service due to her politics, which never happens. If a bakery leans right or Republican, which I don't even think they really do. I think that they're just kind of apolitical. And Whoopi Goldberg just straight up lied and said that they denied her service because of her political affiliation. That's just not true. The thing about pathetic people on the left is that they always try to come up with ways to up their victim game. How can I be a victim in this story? And Whoopi Goldberg has more money than most people could ever even imagine, millions upon millions of dollars, and she craves attention, she craves sympathy, and she does not deserve the attention or sympathy. This is why Whoopi Goldberg, she actually came up with this lie. It was a total lie for no other reason than that she's delusional. Okay. And she claimed that this bakery actually denied her service over her political views. When in reality, the business was just having some boiler issues and they couldn't get her order done on time. Okay. So I think she wanted like some desserts or something. And this was on Fox News. The bakery owner responds to Whoopi Goldberg, claiming that it refused to make her dessert over her politics, her dessert order over her politics, which just isn't true. They were having boiler issues. And she went on TV and she talked about this. And now the bakery is facing all kinds of backlash, from leftists who used to go there or would go there. And because Whoopi said, oh, I don't go here, I was denied service because of my politics. Now this business owner is destroyed. So let's take a listen here. Here's the story on Fox.
What's happening? Whoopi Goldberg causing problems for a bakery, and now a Staten Island bureau president is speaking. Let's watch.
And I think the bottom line here is after we're going to call up Jill, who has had to endure something that she shouldn't have to endure. These people are up at 3 or 4 o'clock every morning. The sacrifices they've made, the holidays they've missed with their families. To make Staten Island better, they have sacrificed for 145 years. Rutherford B. Hayes was the president of the United States, for God's sakes. And they're still here and they're still strong and they're not going anywhere despite what other people on television have to say. And frankly, the people who defamed the Holterman family should apologize to the Holterman family for making stuff up to suit their needs. Not everybody wakes up every day and thinks about politics. A good business person doesn't care about anybody's politics. So with that, I'd like to call up Jill Holterman Bowers. She deserves 110% support. Jill, come on.
It's a community that I have to tell you, I'm so overwhelmed by the support between finding out yesterday this even happened, getting phone calls, and then people coming in, people from all over just supporting us in every way. We had phone calls yesterday from Alabama. Guy says, I'm going to give you $50, send it to a school, send them donuts, send them cupcakes. The support has been so overwhelming, and I know how hard my family has worked to keep this business alive. And I wish my father was here today to see this. He would never believe it. My bakers come in 2 or 3 in the morning just to have donuts and rolls for everybody to come in and say, we have the best rolls ever. And you know what? It took my whole family. It takes everybody, the community that comes every day to see us. We have this everyday conversation with everybody. How's the family? How's this? This is what makes Holtomans. It's the community. It's my fellow everything that come out and us giving back to the community that makes this go round. And if it wasn't for you and Staten Island to make this work, we still wouldn't be here today.
Okay. So I don't understand Whoopi's thought process here. Like, did she think that this was smart? Did she honestly think to herself, oh, I'm going to go on live TV and I'm going to lie and I'm going to pretend that someone said, no, I'm not going to bake a cake for you because you voted for Kamala Harris, and people would somehow feel bad for her? Is that how that thought process went? Like, what's even the point? Honestly, it wouldn't be surprising if she believed her lies. This woman is very, very delusional. So Entertainment Weekly, they tracked down and contacted the company Holterman's Bakery on Staten Island. And thanks to its distinct packaging, now she didn't name the business. I want to be very clear. Whoopi Goldberg, she closed Wednesday's episode, last week's episode on Wednesday, the show with a round of Charlotte Russe desserts. I don't know what those are exactly. And it was at their table there, the view table, and they were having desserts, and she declined to name the bakery. And she talked about how, she declined to name the bakery because initially they had denied her order over her politics or over her political beliefs. And that's not even a good lie, right? It's not even a good lie. I don't know why she would go out there and lie about this, but she wouldn't name the bakery, but there was distinct packaging on the desserts. And the owner, Jill Holterman, did confirm that Goldberg initially requested that the desserts be delivered 2 weeks ago. But she said, yes, we denied it, but it was because we were having boiler issues. It wasn't because of her politics. We denied it initially because of the boiler issues. So I'm going to take a break, but we're going to come back with the story. I do also want to get to a couple of other things this morning. I want to talk about Trump's border czar, Tom Homan. He wastes no time. He said that he's going to designate all of the cartels as a terrorist organization, which should have happened a long time ago. I'll be right back. It's Conservative Cat. Woo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I want to be clear. I got to correct something. I said Geneva mayor. It's a Geneva alderwoman. So this is the alderwoman who, on a private Facebook group, listed like a group listed 31 local businesses that, either supported President Donald Trump or were right leaning. And critics of this woman, her name is Martha Paschke. They say that she targeted these businesses. Now, this is actually interesting. The Southern Poverty Law Center flagged this Facebook group in its Year in Hate and Extremism report in 2023. Okay, so this Facebook group was flagged by the very liberal SPLC for being hateful and extremist. Okay, so the group, it was called Fox Valley Activists, this Facebook group, and it was a group that described themselves as impassioned progressives. And they, published this list in this Facebook group. Now, she said last week that, now Martha, she denies, posting the list or anything like that. But of course, this group of businesses, they received threatening phone calls. They were kind of canceled. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it, or shadowed or banned. Geneva businessman Tom Matson, at a meeting last night, called for an investigation and resignation. He said that Martha should resign. He said, what happened recently is earth-shattering to us, where we have a public representative, somebody who's supposed to be representing the businessmen and women of the community, who is using a list or being part of a group that is producing a list that is casting shame and a shadow on conservative businesses, right? So they compiled this list, obviously, probably from using Public Square, and yeah, it's kind of crazy that you've got public representatives out there kind of targeting and canceling people because of their political beliefs. I wanted to come correct. It's a older woman, not the mayor of Geneva, who kind of blacklisted, I guess, or made a hit list for these businesses. Don't frequent them, or don't shop there, or call them with prank phone calls or with threatening messages. Right? This is what this far left activist group was doing on Facebook. They posted this, and they were calling on progressives to call these businesses and get them shut down or threaten them. So yeah, it happens to conservatives. It doesn't really happen to people like Whoopi Goldberg, where they're denied their order because of her politics. This is what she's lying and saying happened to her at this bakery. And before we took the break, I was telling you about Holterman's Bakery on Staten Island, New York. Right. So thanks to their distinct packaging, we figured out that Jill Holterman was actually behind the desserts on The View. So they were all enjoying some desserts, and there was some packaging. Whoopi didn't name the business, but she said that the business, the bakery, had initially denied her the desserts or her order because of her political beliefs. And that's just not true. So according to Holterman, the owner of the bakery, she said, they had asked us, and we said that we were having trouble with our boilers, and we did not want to definitively say that we could complete the order. Adding that Goldberg initially requested the treats for November 6th on her talk show. She wanted the treats for the November 6th talk show and for the November 13th broadcast of The View. So she wanted them on two different occasions, November 6th and the 13th, both of which she declined originally because she didn't want to make that commitment without carrying through over the uncertainty of her equipment, the boilers, right? So she confirms that an unidentified woman picked up around 50 Charlotte Russe desserts from the bakery at 7:30 a.m. Last week, which she was able to make, but didn't want to commit ahead of time over the ongoing boiler issues. Okay, so she didn't want to commit to giving her the desserts because she didn't want to not fulfill her duty. And she said, hey, we have boiler issues. I don't think that we're going to be able to fulfill these orders. Now, this unidentified woman went in and ordered separately of Whoopi Goldberg, and she did get the Charlotte Russe desserts. But here's the thing. They didn't want to commit ahead of time. That thing is they were nervous that the equipment would fail, and they didn't want them to be out of desserts, right? This is how you operate a business. Whoopi doesn't understand that because she's a millionaire out of touch show host, okay? So she adds that she was not aware of any affiliations that the woman who picked up the desserts on Wednesday morning might have had with regard to the View or otherwise. Wow, incredible. So Whoopi just made up a story in her head. Okay. Now it wasn't Whoopi who was, on the phone requesting the dessert. She had no idea when they had requested the November 6th and 13th dates for those desserts to be made, their political affiliations at all. She just said, hey, we're having boiler issues. I don't want to commit to that. So she just made this story up in her head. Whoopi Goldberg did, as she often does, right? And she has the nerve to pretend that she's some sort of victim here. The fact that Whoopi has more money than these bakery owners would ever have in a lifetime makes this so much worse, okay? She's just so out of touch. She has no idea how hard it is to run a business, especially a bakery. Gosh, it's tough to run anything food related, okay? I know I was in the restaurant industry. It's tough to, inventory and expiration dates on things and equipment, all of it. Whoopi looks at people based on politics, okay? And that's not necessarily everybody's worldview, especially in this space where she's just a business owner in New York, okay? She doesn't have time to think about politics, okay? So Whoopi is just an awful person, deranged, and she targeted this innocent bakery for no reason other than pure narcissism. She wants to be a victim. But unfortunately for her, she can't have her cake and eat it too, because guess what happened? People showed up for this bakery and they were giving them money and, showing their support. And, in the Geneva case, so you've got this Geneva alderwoman who posted this, this blacklist, I guess, or this business list and, called for a boycott of those businesses. The Fox Valley activists, right? They were calling for boycotts. They were calling these businesses, threatening them, these progressive activists. And it was a list of conservative businesses. And this is just wild to me that you have a public representative who is a part of this group and, is trying to take down staples in her own community. It's just insane. But you've got this case in Geneva, and people are showing up. So this, there was standing room only at this city council meeting. So last night it was the Geneva City Council meeting, standing room only. Now there were some people who came out in support of the 4th Ward alderwoman, Martha Paschke. But there were a lot of people who didn't come out in support and were critical of Martha. So you have the bad, the ugly, but you also have the good in these cases where people come out and they show their support. So I'll be right back. Let's get to the border czar, Tom Homan. I want to get to him because he's designating cartels as a terrorist organization, which should have happened a long time ago. I'll be right back. Woo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Man, we've talked about so much this morning. We talked about Illinois and the vote by mail ballots. They have to be counted by today. Today's the last day, 2 weeks after the election. Election integrity groups, they're predicting a very quick, swift end to vote by mail process here in Illinois, at least the 2-week, 14-day vote by mail process where you can count ballots up to 14 days after the election. They're predicting that because of the Republican-controlled Congress. Now we have a Republican majority, and the Republican majority is probably going to cut funding if you don't comply or don't get in line with the correct election laws, right? They could do this. Where you have the Republican majority Congress, they could take a carrot-stick approach, which is what Reagan did, that with states that have laws that allow vote by mail counting after election day. Now, it's very clear in the Constitution, there is a clause that designates 1 day election day. Okay. Now, there is also a case that could get up to the Illinois or to the United States Supreme Court. Now, this was heard in a federal appeals court in Mississippi. Now, it says that, hey, 1 day elections, you can't do the whole counting the ballots if they're postmarked by election day, but they arrive 5 days later thing. Now, here in Illinois, it's 14 days later. In Mississippi, it was 5 days later. The court ruled, hey, you can't do that. So that is going to probably end up in the United States Supreme Court, and it'll probably, the ruling there is probably going to go towards, yeah, let's do 1 day elections, I would imagine, and that could happen before 2026, that ruling from the United States Supreme Court. So we could see 1 day election before the midterm elections in 2026. So this vote by mail stuff might just be done with by then, which is kind of shocking to think about. We talked about that, but I do want to get to Eric Adams. Eric Adams, I kind of... Is he based? Is he a Trump supporter now? I think so. So Eric Adams, he was on with the ladies of The View. And this is kind of interesting. He's not always the voice of reason, but he's been doing a great job of being on the rational side of things lately. He informed the ladies on The View that calling Donald Trump literally Hitler or literally a dictator is not a good look. And here's what it all sounded like. I'm going to play this clip here. Here's Eric Adams on The View.
So you heard us talking about RFK Jr. being the head of HHS. What do you think about that appointment?
The executives will nominate and bring in those who they believe will move their vision forward. And everything from the fluoride issue. I believe we should have fluoride in the water based on what my experts are telling me. But let's be clear, there's a real problem with our food in our country. And we need to watch what we're feeding our children. And
what is the major problem, do you think?
too much hormones. You know, many people know my, you know, I almost lost my sight with diabetes. The doctor told me I would be blind in a year. I was going to lose my fingers and toes. And it was my food. It wasn't my DNA. It was my dinner.
But JFK Jr. Ate RFK Jr. ate some pork and now he has a brain worm. Is he the person that should be in charge of that?
Yeah, well, let's
food?
Right. And let's understand this also. In all of these agencies, there are thousands of employees and experts that understand these topics, and there are rules, there are regulations.
Mayor, a lot of them want to resign. When they see some of the people that are going to be on top, I think there's going to be a mass exodus of people who have the institutional knowledge and the institutional memory in DOD, at HHS. Who wants to work under our cook?
And let me respond to that. If we love our country, then no one individual should take us away from our mission.
Yes.
If you dedicated your life to a particular place, I dedicated my life to law enforcement. So if a new commissioner came in that I disagreed with, I was not going to say, I'm going to resign. Let's love the country. Let's love our cities. Let's get away from the rhetoric of the professionalism that we know. Those are experts in this. They're going to look at his proposal, do a real analysis, and make these decisions. It happens every day.
Shouldn't he have a background at least? He should have some kind of background in this type of thing.
Let me just, okay, so Mayor, when Trump returns to office, he will actually have a lot of power with the Republican-controlled Senate and House. He suggested at times using the National Guard to target the enemy within, and key members of his last administration called him a fascist. But you've defended him. Can you explain?
No, I defended the rhetoric that we're using across our country and what our children are listening to and what we're doing. We've reached a point in this country where we no longer want to engage in conversation. They were even calling him Hitler. That's an insult.
That was only his vice president.
That was an insult. That was an insult to the millions of Jews and others who died. We know what Hitler did. And what I said to our country, when I'm on the streets talking to my young people who are protesting on college campuses, wearing Hamas signs and calling for the destructions of groups, I said, we have to bring down this rhetoric. We have to start engaging in conversation. You know, Obama said it right, and I agree. This is not the divided state. This is the United States. We're the greatest country on the globe, and people are watching us and name calling.
But do you think Trump should have brought down the rhetoric? Because
everybody should.
Well, let's start at the top then, because maybe it trickles down.
Everybody should.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah. Lots going on there. Firstly, they don't care about Adams, what Adams thinks about RFK Jr. Okay, they really don't care about what Adams thinks about it. They just want a chance to trash talk everything that the Trump administration does. And Trump could literally cure diabetes and these ladies would cry about it. Okay, so they have no interest in Eric Adams' thoughts about RFK Jr. being the appointee here. Secondly, the fact that they're crying that a lot of people are going to resign when Trump gets in, that's objectively, I think, a good thing. Woohoo, get them out of there. There's no reason that the government should be big enough to where you'll see a mass exodus. There shouldn't even be that many government employees. And Anna Navarro there is claiming, there's going to be enough employees for a mass exodus from the government sector. That's a good thing. That's a great thing. There should not be that many government employees, and I say get them out of there. I do want to take a quick break, but we're going to wrap up the story on the other side. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9.
Specifically designed to help people struggling with tax debt. Powerful tax assistance programs that can save you thousands if you qualify. No one knows these programs better than the experts at Optima Tax Relief, America's most trusted tax resolution firm. A-rated by the Better Business Bureau. Their award-winning team of tax attorneys and licensed professionals have resolved over $1 million of tax debt for their clients. One call to Optima can start the process, helping to end your worries about wage garnishment, asset seizure, and other IRS actions. Make sure you're getting the best options to solve your tax problems. Call the experts at Optima today for a free confidential consultation. Call 800-293-9744. 800-293-9744. 800-293-9744.
Woo! Hey, good morning. It's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I got to pull up this number, but it's a huge number. And non-citizens in our federal prisons, it's a big number, folks. From 2023 2024, there's a ton of right here in the Illinois Department of Corrections. Actually, I know it's not a federal prison, but there was a state prison that was housing Gabriel Calixto. You guys remember that story where he stabbed a girl to death. Still don't know where he's at. He was on the run, and it was believed that he returned to Mexico, but he was serving in the IDOC and then released by the IDOC for kidnapping a girl. He pled to lesser charges. He was supposed to serve 6 years, and then I think he wound up serving like 2 or 3, something like that, which is just wild. So there's plenty of illegals in our federal prisons, in our prisons just in general. So Ana Navarro on The View last week, I think she claimed that there weren't enough illegal immigrants in federal prisons to consider it a mass exodus from our prisons if they were deported first. That's where we have to start with the mass deportations, is the federal prisons and our prisons. We just got to get them out of here. And she goes, "Oh, there's not enough illegals in our federal prison systems to warrant a mass exodus." Oh no, there are plenty, Anna Navarro. So this week she's saying that it's going to be terrible that there's going to be this mass exodus from the government once Donald Trump gets in. Oh, good, get out of here. Government shouldn't be big enough to where there would be a mass exodus. Additionally, the fact that they're blaming Donald Trump for their rhetoric is deranged. It's pathetic. Although I disagree with the Barack Obama comments from Eric Adams. I played a clip where he says, oh, Barack Obama said we are a united nation, not a divided nation. Barack Obama did everything he could to divide this country. Okay. He didn't do anything to unify us. It's the left who cannot bear to treat people respectfully when they disagree with them. That's a lot of what today's show was about. The teacher could not refrain from calling for quite literally the killing of Trump supporters via video. She went out there and said that she wants to put them all on stretchers. Boom, gone forever. They can't be respectful. The Geneva older woman, where she, she puts out a list, pretty much shadow banning or blacklisting these businesses just because of their political affiliation. So they cannot bear to treat people respectfully when they disagree with them. It's people like the ladies on The View slandering half the country as fascist. That's the rhetoric that we're talking about here that needs to be toned down, not Donald Trump's rhetoric. The same ones dividing up people into identity groups, transgender, gay, non-binary, whatever it is. They're the ones who are dividing this country. They're the ones with the hateful rhetoric. So just think about the standard they're setting for this nation, for this nation's children. Not only are they instilling fear into them, but they're setting an example here that simple political disagreement on what to do with, the illegal immigrants in our federal prisons. That's a very simple political disagreement. You refer to those you disagree with as Nazis, okay? And think about the example you're setting for this nation's children. And there's nothing more evil than that, politically evil than that. So Eric Adams, he was on The View and he, said, hey, we need to tone down the rhetoric. And RFK Jr., they kept saying, they all say that he's a nut and that he's a quack. RFK Jr. probably has just the fact that the left hates him makes him qualified for that position. Okay. First of all. Second of all, they hate him because he's going to go after the pharmaceutical industry. And Dick Durbin got out there and called him or said that he was involved in quack science. Your U.S. Senator, by the way, who needs to get out of there. This guy is older than dirt. He's been there long before, since I've been alive. Term limits should exist for people like Dick Durbin. Now, he said that RFK Jr. is a part of quack science. You know what quack science is, Dick? Quack science is saying that you can overdose on supplements and that vitamin C should be regulated and you should register with the FDA if you're going to sell vitamin C, vitamin D, magnesium, creatine, all of these different supplements. That's what he wants with his Dietary Supplement Act. And that's why that's the true reason why he doesn't want RFK Jr. as the health secretary, because I'm willing to bet that RFK Jr. thinks that supplements are good for you. And they are a great alternative to pharmaceutical the industry's answers to chronic disease, diabetes, things like that. There are supplements out there that can help people, and it's cheaper, it's more cost effective, and it's more effective, period. Dick Durbin wants his buddies in the pharmaceutical industry to get rich so he can get rich. That's what this is about. That's why RFK Jr. is a quack in his eyes. You guys have a blessed rest of your day. Bye-bye. I love you. We'll do it all over again tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. It's been Conservative Cat. Find me on YouTube and subscribe to the channel today. I'll talk to you soon.